Friday. Doesn't feel like one. But I will tell you what I feel like. Well, I feel like Van der Pugert, and this is Finding Frequency. Whew. Episode 300 and something. I noticed last night when I was uploading the episode that I'm already sitting on 300 and something. So 50, 60 odd episodes still to go, and my experiment comes to an end. I actually don't know if I want to stop the experiment. I'm enjoying doing these, but I probably have to rethink a little bit what I'm going to do next year, what it means, because something needs to have meaning, either for you, for me, or for both of us, I think. Probably that's the win-win. But let's not get too philosophical. I wanted to reflect a little bit on what happened today, and as I walk up and down while I'm recording this, my laptop is rendering some video in the background. So as I mentioned yesterday, very, very tired yesterday, and a little bit today as well. As definitely have another case of edit phase today, because I spent 80% of my day in the company of German professors. And yes, I'm editing video with German professors in it, speaking German. And it's funny for me, specifically being Afrikaans, how much of some of the conversations I can actually understand, and then the bulk I don't. So it just made me also reflect on the fact that I get to hear these languages. This morning I had a meeting with some friends of mine in the Netherlands, and as I logged into the meeting, they were speaking Dutch. And of course, Dutch is very close to my home language, and I could understand what they were saying, but it was so exciting in a way just to hear those languages, this variety. And I think that's what I'm enjoying being here in Europe, is that I get to experience this, and sometimes I forget how lucky I am. And today was one of those things. But is it extraordinary? I think it is. That's a personal extraordinary, but maybe I can share something with you. So the Dutch guys I hung out with today as friends, clients, we're working on a project together, and funny enough, so many things need to be finished next week, and that's working on their project. That needs to happen next week too. And one of the guys in the call is actually a consultant and helps business people, entrepreneurs, corporates, C-suite folks, coaches them, but he's also a very practical guy. And we were talking today and speaking about this event that we're going to be hosting and some of the work that he's going to be covering. And he recapped some of the work that he shared with us last year, because this is the second time he's running this event. And he was talking about reverse thinking. And I think this week specifically, Martha was guilty of it, and we had a conversation about it. But I think I'm sometimes very, very guilty of reverse thinking. Now, I'm going to explain to you what I understand it to be. I hope I'm not butchering his thought, but reverse thinking is trying to project what's going to happen in the future by taking into account what happened in the past, and really focusing on what's happening in the past to build the story of the future. And in his opinion, that is not the way to look at things. So it also aligns with what Martha and I spoke about this week, is that sometimes you struggle with things. There's some tough times coming up, and I also have to make some business decisions, and sometimes you have to deal with something where you've made a mistake, and you play these conversations or these scenarios out in your mind. But you are playing these scenarios out in your mind based on your own personal experiences and some of your own personal biases. And sometimes also because we tend to be very critical of ourselves, those stories tend to be a little bit negative. And the problem is that you cannot predict how other people are going to react. And I'm specifically referring to where you have to deal with a client, maybe you have to tell a boss something difficult, or a partner. You cannot really predict what the reaction is going to be. And sometimes you make the mistake by playing out the scenario in your head, getting all negative and frustrated about it, and potentially making a decision to avoid that negative situation, even though you haven't really done it for real. Am I making sense? So I think what I learned out of this is, of course, we have to learn from past experiences, take something out of it, but do not live in the past all the time, and do not try and play out scenarios that you have no control over. Go into the scenario and trust your gut, and let it play out, because sometimes, And I must say, most of the times, you'd be surprised what people do and how people react and how people want to help each other out. And if you live in this negative scenario, you're going to maybe miss out on having that support or input. And I've seen that happen. And then finally, something else you also mentioned is that, remember, the way you think of yourself and the way that you think about the things around you, the more you think about it, the more you will become it. So you have to control over it. And I like that too, because sometimes I can become very grumpy, or I get worried about things like what's happening in the States now with the politics, and also here in Poland. And I get grumpy and negative. And the more I think about it, the more negative I get. So I'm not saying you should deny these things or fight it or work against it or speak out. But be careful not to fall in a kind of dark space. And I'm not preaching to you, I'm saying it to myself. And like I said to Martha this morning, is I say a lot of these things because, man, have I screwed up along the way. Whew, that was a mouthful. Anyway, so there I said it again. Anyway, Afrikaner. So I'm going to leave it there. I have to move my laptop out of my office into the kitchen because the little man wants to come sleep and I still have a lot of work to do. I'm tired, but I'm grateful.